Good morning. I'm Roger Botten, Chairman of the Student Attendance Advisory Committee, and I would like to call the committee to order at 9:02. Can the recording secretary perform the roll call?
Jason Trevino. Roger Botten.
Present.
Carrie Pruitt. Lacey Keel. Charles Aglubat.
Present.
Riley Killingsworth.
Present.
Shelley Buchanan. Thank you.
So, the recording secretary, is there any public comment?
I've received no public comment.
All right. 2.01, if you want to look over the Student Advisory Committee minute meetings from June 10th, give a second to look over that and see if there's any questions or concerns. I'd like to see if I can get a motion from the committee to approve the minutes from June 10th.
I move to approve the minutes from our prior meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, and second. Any comment on that, on the minutes?
No comments received.
All right. And like, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, then that passes. All right, move on to 2.02. That's possible action to select a chair of the Student Attendance Advisory Committee for the term ending June 30th, 2022 from the following: Charles Aguilat, Roger Botten, Shelley Buchanan, Lacey Keel, Riley Killingsworth, Carrie Pruitt, and Jason Trevino.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I do want to remind you our current chair is Roger Botten. I have to ask our legal counsel, Roger, just started as chair a couple of months ago. However, his term ended June 30th, and he has elected through email to continue on with our board. So if he wants to continue as chair, do we need to elect him today?
Yeah, we should still elect him. He should probably voice his interest in being chair, and then because it did expire and we have this as a action item, then we would just want to revote him in to start a new term.
Okay.
I would agree to continue as chair or nominate myself, whatever that would be. I'd ask for a motion to approve me as the continuing as chair.
I move that Mr. Roger Botten will continue as chair of our committee.
Can I get a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, Charles, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess I have to vote on that. All right, any opposed? Then that passes. I will continue as chair. Thank you. All right, 2.03, we have a possible action to select the vice chair for the Attendance Advisory Committee for the term ending June 30th, 2022 from among the following: Charles Aguilat, I'm already chair, so I guess I exclude myself, Shelley Buchanan, Lacey Keel, Riley Killingsworth, Carrie Pruitt, and Jason Trevino. And I guess we'll have discussion or see if we have any nominations for that.
I will nominate this Charles Aglubat. I will nominate Jason Trevino.
Well,
Not
it might be
present at the
problematic if he is not here to accept it. So I think currently we just have to go by who is present for that position. And then if no one here wants the vice chair, then we can just table that for another agenda.
Do we have who was vice chair last term?
Yeah.
I thought it was Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would like to just let you guys all know, vice chair, typically the role of a vice chair is to, when the chair is out, to run the meetings. So that's kind of the primary purpose of a vice chair.
So if there's any nominations, otherwise we could table that. I will suggest we table that till next meeting.
Good idea.
So table that. All right, we'll move on. Point 2.04, presentation discussion of the Washoe County School District 2022-23 school year attendance initiatives to reduce chronic absenteeism in schools. It's for discussion only.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Rochelle Muriel for the record. I'm inviting Mr. Doug Taylor up here, who is our attendance coordinator. We're going to co-present on this agenda item. We'd like to update you a little bit on some of the things that we are doing around attendance and improving chronic absenteeism rates. If you recall in our last meeting on your minutes in 2.04, we voted for my department to move forward on providing training and support to principals around chronic absenteeism and interventions for principals within Washoe County School District. Doug and I have worked really hard and have been a part of some work to provide training. And so Doug is going to give you some of the details. He's done the majority of the work, so I appreciate that. I'd like to publicly thank him for that. Just to give you a little bit of an update, we continue to have 10 attendance officers. Some of those are ESSER-funded attendance officers. The vast majority of attendance officers have one, at the most, 2 high schools on their caseload, about 2 middle schools, and about 8 elementary schools. So every school in Washoe County School District does have an attendance officer assigned to their school. We have done trainings with all principals. So Doug and I presented to principals at the principal meeting and discussed attendance interventions, and attendance officers and the services they can provide. We also have 6 re-engagement specialists. Their caseloads are a little bit larger because there's only 6 of them, but they are primarily working with students who are no longer enrolled in our district. So we are looking for them, we're reaching out to them, trying to understand the reasons why they left, and then helping them return to an academic setting that's most appropriate for them. Last year, Doug did a lot of work around student voice and created some really amazing videos, some of which we have seen here in this attendance advisory meetings. And then we are also part of an initiative through multi-tiered systems of support. Last year, schools were able to choose strands that they wanted to focus on this year, and 9 schools within the school district chose attendance. So Doug and I and 2 of our colleagues, Nisa and Hector, who you will hear from later on in this meeting, will be working with us to provide training to all of those schools, as well as technical assistance. So we will be doing larger trainings, and then we will be going to the school to provide some more hands-on interactive training, specifically to meet the needs of schools. Schools have different needs depending on where they're at. So we'll be there to meet the needs of those schools. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and I'm going to turn it over to Doug to update you on some other things that we're doing.
Good morning, everyone. So in terms of updates, Rochelle already mentioned that we did present all the attendance updates to all the principals at the principals meeting that started before school. I also offered training courses through my PGS to all attendance clerks, administrators, secretaries. It was available for counseling staff, basically anybody that has contact with attendance systems and processes in the district. We had over 300 people attend those courses over the various times that they were offered, which in representation from every single school in the district were present at those trainings. We did have some changes that we made this year that we wanted to present to you. First of all, we did make some changes to our coding. We removed, as you will see in the flyer that I've handed out to you, we removed the C-tab code, which was the one we used for contact tracing in the past. We are no longer doing contact tracing, so no longer had need of that code. We added in a code for on-campus, out-of-class, and that code is for schools to use in that case when students are at school and present but are not attending class. Often they're found wandering hallways or things like that, which per Nevada revised statute could not be considered as truancy, but we wanted to give schools a way to recognize when that was happening and provide structure for positive conversations with students around identifying reasons why students are engaging in that behavior and finding ways to re-engage students in class. So that's the reason for that code. We changed the acronym for the Children in Transition Code, CIT, from CIT to MVE. MVE stands for McKinney-Vento Eligible. If you're not familiar, McKinney-Vento was the act back from 1987 that created the CIT program in the first place. The reason for that change was to protect student privacy. CIT has become a very well-known acronym at this point for students that are dealing with homeless situations. And when those records get looked at or subpoenaed, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't quite so obvious, that those students and those families were dealing with that type of situation. We also added some codes this year. As you know, we have had to continue with the transportation blackout procedures rolling through zones, at least at the start of the year. We don't know whether or not that will continue all year or not. We hope it won't. We just don't know. But it is going right now. So we've added the TRA code, which schools can use when students are absent, and the reason for that absence is specifically because that student normally rides the bus and there is no bus available for them. We wanted schools to be able to track that. We also wanted to have a better way to track that information at the district level so we can measure the exact impact of those bus blackouts. We are, however, also offering temporary distance learning to students when they are unable to attend school due to bus blackouts, in the same way that we offer temporary distance learning to students when they're on COVID exclusion. And if students participate in that temporary distance learning opportunity at their school, then we code them with TRP, standing for Transportation Present, which means the student is considered to be present even though they're learning through temporary distance learning. So we have those two possible codes. Finally, last code that we added back in is the REL code, which stands for Religious Reasons. And we added that back in as a result of focus groups that we ran with administrators and office staff last year, where we identified that many of our families were wanting us to be able to recognize when they took a holiday for religious purposes, or took a day off rather for religious purposes. And so we added that code back in to try to streamline with our families the fact that we do recognize that those are religious absences. They do count, per Nevada law and NDOE policy, they do still count the same way that any other absence counts. But we do recognize now in the Infinite Campus system when they are religious reasons as opposed to just coding them all as domestic. So those are the coding changes. The other thing I just kind of wanted to share with you today, and this isn't really a change this year, but it's one that we're really publicizing heavily through all of the trainings that I did, and that has to do with types of absences in Washoe County School District. We get lots of questions about types of absences and excused versus unexcused. And so just in real brief terms, in the Washoe County School District, we do not have excused or unexcused absences. I think I maybe mentioned that in this forum once before, but it's worth reviewing just because we're reviewing it heavily with all the schools. What we have are two types of absences. One is exempt, and when I say exempt, that means it's exempt from consideration towards chronic absenteeism. The only types of absences that are exempt are those for which we receive documentation from a medical, mental, or behavioral health professional stating that the student needed to be out of school for one of those types of reasons. Of course, COVID exclusions are by definition exempt absences. They have been ordered by a medical professional. Every other absence, as long as we don't have documentation, is just an absence and is considered non-exempt. And so if they're domestic, if they're medical without documentation, if they're CIT, if they're religious, all of those absences count exactly the same way and are just considered to be absences. So those are kind of our big changes for this year. On the back of the flyer, I think, is actually 2.05, so I'm going to save that one for when we move on to the next item in the agenda, I think. Mr. Botten, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that kind of updates you on the changes for this year.
Roger Botten for the record. I want to thank you for the work you've done on the attendance. I've had a lot of counselors come to me and asking me about the coding if there's a transportation issue for the district, so that's helpful to have that code. Have we pushed that out? We've pushed that information out to the schools so far?
Yes, we have. So it's been made available in several different ways. All of the codes, as part of a code review, are part of the attendance training that, as I said, we had over 300 school people attend. We also have a coding cheat sheet, which was delivered to all the schools. It lists all the codes and exactly what their meaning is, and is also available on the attendance website, washoschools.net/attendance, along with the full version of that training that I offer to all schools also being there.
Okay, Roger Botten, for the record again. I have a meeting for my elementary school counselors, and they handle the bulk of attendance at elementary school, and interventions on that. And I was wondering if they can, I think I have asked you if you could come talk to the meeting at the end of the month. If we could go over that, would be helpful, I think, with them as a new coding.
I would certainly be happy to attend that meeting as well.
Any other questions?
Shelley Buchanan, for the record. I like the fact that you're trying to drill down reasons for absenteeism because it can vary. And I'm wondering if there's any other way that the district or schools can track reasons for absences, especially those who are chronically absent, and figure out if there's differences between elementary, high school, differences between types of students, demographics, stuff like that, that can help schools do preventative measures and really pinpoint what they can do to prevent it from happening?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking, Doug Taylor, again, for the record. So yes, absolutely there are, and that's part of the training that was offered to schools. There are a number of reports that can be run both through Infinite Campus and through BIG, which is our other data warehouse. And as part of that training that schools go through, we talked about how to look at specific reports and how to combine the information in those reports to be able to, number one, identify students, and then number two, as part of my job last year, we developed a toolkit for site leadership to be able to use to be able to address chronic absenteeism. And in that toolkit, there are 3 sections. The first section is all about data, how to look at, analyze, and interpret data. The second section is all about recommended interventions and practices at the tier 1, 2, and 3 level. And it includes templates and tools that schools can print out. They can tailor to their own use, but they can also just use them just as they are and put into effect. Ms. Murillo also mentioned that we have been working with those 9 pilot schools, and one of the things we're doing with those 9 pilot schools is testing out some additional training and some additional possible opportunities that schools can use specifically to address and identify students and then address the core reasons for chronic absenteeism. One of the things that I message very strongly to schools is chronic absenteeism is almost always a symptom of a problem that a student is having. And so if we can identify that problem, solve that issue, then we can deal with the chronic absenteeism and get students to school. So we're working really hard on that this year, yes.
Shelley Buchanan, for the record. Thank you so much. And I was thinking of that big data and how you could cross-tabulate that with stuff in Infinite Campus. Have the principals seen any kind of patterns, any kind of patterns that you can foretell for the future using this data so far?
I mean, there's lots. Doug Taylor again, sorry. There are lots of patterns that we can look at. We certainly have some overrepresentation of some specific populations of students, that are experiencing chronic absenteeism, and some of the work in the toolkit is specifically meant to address that overrepresentation. We have seen, patterns in terms of increases in chronic absenteeism over the period of COVID, when we were in pandemic times. Those have been reducing over the last couple of years. We went from about 38% chronic absenteeism in 2020 to about 21 or 22% last year. This year so far, we're sitting at about between 17 to 19%. So we continue to see reductions in chronic absenteeism numbers. It is our hope that through the use of the toolkit, through the use of the data, and through the use of information that is sent from my office to all schools every month with regards to students that need intervention, that we will continue to see a reduction in those numbers.
I just wanted to add, Rochelle Murillo, for the record, we've also been able to partner with our communications department and family school partnerships department, and they've developed some really amazing parent communication materials that you can find on our attendance website. Parents can access it. They're in multiple languages. And it just gives parents some information about attendance, what is exempt, non-exempt, how do you report attendance, things that you can do as a parent to encourage good attendance. So we appreciate that. I see Fatima Rivas, and that reminded me to thank them because they've been an amazing partner in helping us to develop parent materials too.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 2.05, presentation discussion on the new Washoe County School District Parent Attendance Reporting Form for the 2022-23 school year.
Okay, so Doug Taylor again for the record. Again, based on those focus groups that we ran last year and based on some information that was shared with us by various members of Washoe County School District staff, including members of our department and the other departments in the Riggins area, one of the things that we learned was that schools and front office staff were really getting overloaded and overwhelmed with a number of absence requests that were coming in via telephone in the morning. Sometimes they would get in the morning and find in excess of 200 voicemail messages waiting for them, with parents requesting, absences or reporting absences for the day. And so last year we worked with a number of offices in the district, including OSL, to adopt some new functionality in Infinite Campus. And that new functionality is the parent absence request form. So parents are now able to request an absence directly online, either through the parent portal on the website or through the Infinite Campus app on their phone. When they do that, they essentially get three choices to request an absence for. So they put in the dates that they're requesting, the time they're requesting. They can request a full day absence, an arrive late absence, or a leave early absence. And then they enter a reason for that absence, and they can choose from medical, domestic, or religious. Parents or guardians are required to enter a comment about what their absence, what the reason they're requesting that absence. And then they click submit. On the processor side, the school secretary, attendance clerk, whoever's processing requests at school has a new form in their index section in Infinite Campus that shows them what looks like a spreadsheet that shows all absence requests that have been requested for that day. And they can very quickly see the details of that absence and very quickly process that absence request. When they process that absence request, it automatically applies coding to the days requested for the absence for all those days right through the system. So by way of example, I was visiting Reed High School yesterday and doing some additional one-on-one training with a new attendance person that has just been hired there. And we worked through and processed some of those absence requests. We were able to process 5 absence requests in less than 30 seconds. And that was with a brand new person who I was training to do it. So the folks that are doing it, that are experienced are able to process even faster than that. Processing those same 5 absence requests by listening to voicemails would have taken a lot more than 30 seconds. So it's speeding up our process time for families and making things a lot easier for families. It's speeding up our processing time in front office and freeing up front office staff to then be able to do some of those things that Ms. Buchanan was asking about earlier in terms of identifying students in need of intervention. Some of that time that was being used previously for just having to listen to voicemails and process can now be used to work to identify students in need of supports. Again, I do want to thank our communications office because our communications office worked really hard to put together materials for us to communicate the absence request processing form to families. On the attendance website is a step-by-step instructional video for families that shows them exactly how to access and how to request an absence. We also have materials in both English and Spanish that include a frequently asked questions document and instructions that are screenshotted and shown exactly how families can do it in a printed format. And we've shared those with schools as well, and we've encouraged school staff to make those printed materials available in the front office so that when they're communicating with families about the use of this form, they have those materials available. I do want to emphasize that we are not removing the ability for families to make phone calls to the school. We recognize that not all families are going to want to or be able to access an online tool. And so there still is and always will be, or at least for the foreseeable future, will be the ability for families to continue to make phone calls to request absences and reach out that way to schools. But we're strongly encouraging the use of this new tool so that, as stated before, we can support our families and also support the efforts to identify and intervene for students when they need support with attendance.
Roger Botton for the record. That's the first I've heard of. That's a great idea. I think that tool's really going to be efficient for both families and for school staff. And my one question, does that generate a report that other staff can access?
Yeah, absolutely. So anything that's processed through the form can be reported on that as specific to processing through the form, but it also, anything entered that way is entered into all of the other reports that are already available in Infinite Campus, right? So if we need to find out when a student was checked out, when a student had requested a medical absence, all of that information can be found in Infinite Campus and also exports to BIG in most cases.
Roger Botton for the record. Okay, that's interesting. I'd like to take a look at that again. Any further questions?
Shelley Buchanan for the record. I'd just like to add, I really appreciate that as a parent, because I know that when my kid was in elementary school and the office staff wasn't there till like 9 o'clock to take a phone call, and I had to wait to report the absence. If it's on my phone, it's on an app, I can do it at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't have to wait. So I think it's probably going to increase the amount of reported excused absences.
We certainly hope so. That was a secondary reason for this adoption. In the past, the UNV attendance code has been the #1 most used attendance code. UNV stands for unverified, which means the student was not at school and we don't know the reason why. So our secondary reason for this adoption was to try to cut back on the number of UNVs. And I will add that so far the data is proving that out, because as of yesterday, UNV was not the #1 code. It was the #2 code, but it was not the #1 code. MED was the #1 code as of yesterday in the district. So it's so far been successful, and the feedback we've gotten has been very positive.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 2.06, presentation and information on the focus for Washoe County School District Student Attendance Review Boards for the 2022 to 23 school year.
Okay, hello everyone. Rochelle Murillo for the record. I'm inviting up Mr. Hector Garcia and Ms. Nisa Butler. They are re-engagement facilitators in the intervention department. They're going to be presenting to us today. They will be facilitating some of the trainings that we have discussed in this agenda. They will also be case managing students through our Student Attendance Review Board, the hearings that we do for students that are severely chronically absent. So they're going to give you an overview of who they are and what they will be doing in this upcoming year.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Nisa Butler for the record. I came and presented the end of the school year at the last meeting, so just the data on the percentages of populations we were seeing that increased attendance or decreased attendance. So we haven't started working with our new SARB cases this year, so just wanted to let you guys know, over the summer, as Doug mentioned, we started working on trainings for the schools to bring in for teachers, families, and admin. So my role will be to create a training that I just am finishing up, and I'll be presenting next week to the teachers that signed up for that MTSS attendance training. So we'll be doing that next week, and then Hector will be working with the parents and creating a parent training. And then kind of this school year hit the ground running with some of the families that from last year that were SARB'd at the end of the year. So a couple of them they were no-shows. Some still just needed some extra support with crises, and just working closely with the families that I was working with at the end of the school year.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Garcia, and so I'm actually new for the re-engagement facilitator position. I work as a truancy officer for 4 years, which I hope that the experience that I gain as a truancy officer will help me out to be able to work with the families that I will be case managing through the SARP process. So I'm super excited. I'll be working with the high schools, all the high schools. I got my bachelor's degree in human development and family studies, and my emphasis was adolescents, which I really love to work with adolescents. So I'll be working with, all the high schools, and I'm excited about it. I will also be doing the parent training with the schools. We're gonna present it in about a month to the pilot schools, and then we're just gonna go out to other schools and promote it with, other schools that would like to have the training for the parents. Usually the training will be basically focused on, explaining the parents about attendance, what the law says about attendance, but also we're going to give them some tools on how to help when their kids are refusing to go to school or are having difficulties, attending to school.
And I just want to remind this council that for SARB, we call it SARB, it's the Student Attendance Review Board hearing. Those are hearings that we do for schools who refer students who are severely chronically absent. We meet collaboratively with the student, the family, and the school staff. We develop goals around the root causes around being absent and addressing those reasons. And then Nisa and Hector will be providing case management and follow up around the goals that we have set for the family for 45 days after that hearing.
Okay, Roger Botton for the record. Want to thank you both for your information and for the work you're doing. Let's see if there's any questions for them. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, well, I want to move on here to our 3.01 closing. I want to see if there's any. Sorry, ask for any public comment.
I have received no public comment requests.
I would like to say one thing during public comment. You all will see a new face here, Shelley Buchanan. I wanted to welcome you. She is our new at-large representative. And so just wanted to welcome you to our Student Attendance Advisory Committee.
Roger Botton, for the record, welcome to the chair. It's good to have you here, board. Okay, I want to go on 3.02 since there's no additional public comment. 3.02, announcement of next meetings, December 9th. Same time, 9 o'clock, same place. Okay. Well, at this time, I would like to adjourn the meeting at, 9:38? 33. Oh, 33. Oh, right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.